Audrey Lopez feels Kenneth Williams' muscular arm tighten around her throat like a python. The cold concrete wall of the bleachers presses against her back as Russell Davis pins her arms and Dennis Garcia controls her legs. The 17-year-old girl weighs only 110 pounds. Kenneth towers over her at 6 feet 3 inches and 220 pounds of solid muscle. "Time to teach you some respect," Kenneth hisses into her ear, his wrestling team grip cutting off the blood flow to her brain. Darkness creeps in from the edges of her vision. What Kenneth doesn't know is that Audrey's father is Carlos El Martillo Lopez, former UFC heavyweight champion. What he's about to discover is that 11 years of mixed martial arts training doesn't disappear just because a girl stays quiet. The Friday afternoon sun casts long shadows behind the Westfield High School football stadium. It's 4 p.m., and most students have gone home, leaving this isolated concrete structure perfect for settling scores. Kenneth's plan seems flawless. Russell holds the small girl's arms while Dennis films from an angle that will make her look like the aggressor when she fights back. If you're enjoying this incredible story of justice, please hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing tales that will blow your mind. Comment your country below so I can see where my amazing viewers are from around the world. And if these stories inspire you, consider hitting the thanks button to support more content like this. Your support means everything and helps me bring you these powerful stories that need to be heard. Thank you so much for being here with me. But as Kenneth applies more pressure to Audrey's carotid artery, he has no idea that his victim has been sparring with professional fighters since the age of 6. Her father made sure she could handle exactly this type of situation. 3 weeks earlier, Audrey Lopez walks through the pristine hallways of Westfield High with her head down and her books clutched tightly to her chest. She's learned that invisibility is her best defense in a school where your family's bank account determines your social status. Her scholarship covers full tuition to this elite private institution. The other students wear designer clothes that cost more than her family's monthly rent. Audrey's long black hair falls like a curtain around her face. She's perfected the art of being unremarkable, unnoticed, unthreatening. What none of her classmates know is that the quiet girl who eats lunch alone in the corner could probably defeat most of the boys on the wrestling team. Her father, Carlos El Martillo Lopez, retired from the UFC as an undefeated heavyweight champion. And he's spent the last 11 years training his daughter in the art of combat. Kenneth Williams strides through the same hallways like he owns them. Technically, his family does own a significant portion of the school through their charitable donations, and his father, Judge Williams, sits on the board of trustees. At 18 years old, Kenneth has never heard the word no applied to anything he wants. His 6'3" frame and wrestling team captain status make him the unofficial king of Westfield High. Behind him walk his constant companions Russell Davis and Dennis Garcia. Russell's father is the police chief, while Dennis's father chairs the school board. The three boys have grown up together in a bubble of privilege and entitlement. They've learned that money and family connections can make any problem disappear. The cafeteria buzzes with the usual lunchtime chatter when Kenneth spots Audrey sitting alone at a corner table. She's reading a book while eating a homemade sandwich, completely absorbed in her own world. Something about her isolation intrigues him. Most girls at Westfield either throw themselves at him for his status or avoid him out of fear. But this one seems genuinely unaware of his existence. "Who's the scholarship girl?" Kenneth asks Russell, nodding toward Audrey's table. Russell shrugs, but Dennis pulls out his phone to do some quick social media reconnaissance. "Audrey Lopez," Dennis reports after scrolling through her minimal online presence. "Lives on the East Side, full academic scholarship, honor roll student. Father works as a personal trainer or something. The dismissive tone in Dennis's voice makes it clear what he thinks of blue-collar jobs. Kenneth's interest increases when he realizes this girl represents everything his social circle typically looks down upon. Perfect, Kenneth murmurs, a plan already forming in his mind. Time to welcome her to Westfield properly. The approach happens on a Tuesday during lunch break. Kenneth walks over to Audrey's table with his usual confident swagger, while Russell and Dennis flank him like bodyguards. "Hey there, scholarship girl," Kenneth says, sliding uninvited into the seat across from Audrey. She looks up from her chemistry textbook with startled brown eyes. "I'm Kenneth Williams. You probably know who I am." Audrey's voice comes out barely above a whisper when she responds, "I'm just trying to eat my lunch." The tremor in her voice sends a thrill through Kenneth. He lives for the moment when someone realizes they're completely at his mercy. "See? That's not very friendly," Kenneth continues, leaning forward with a predatory smile. "I was thinking maybe you'd like to go out this weekend. There's a party at my father's country club." The offer isn't really an offer. Kenneth expects immediate acceptance, followed by grateful stammering. Instead, Audrey shakes her head and starts packing up her books. "Thank you, but I can't. I have to work." The rejection hits Kenneth like a physical blow. He's never been turned down by anyone, let alone a scholarship student who should be grateful for his attention. Russell and Dennis exchange glances. They can see the dangerous flush creeping up Kenneth's neck, the telltale sign that his famous temper is about to explode. "Excuse me." Kenneth's voice drops to a menacing whisper. "Do you know who you're talking to?" Audrey's hands shake slightly as she continues gathering her belongings. "I really need to get to class." And when she stands to leave, Kenneth's hand shoots out and grabs her wrist. His grip is tight enough to leave marks. "Girls like you don't walk away from me," he hisses. "Maybe you need to learn some respect." The cafeteria gradually goes quiet as other students sense the brewing confrontation. Phones appear as kids start recording what promises to be another viral Kenneth Williams moment. Audrey looks down at Kenneth's hand on her wrist. For just a moment, something flickers behind her dark eyes. Something that makes Kenneth's grip loosen involuntarily. Then the moment passes, and she's back to being the scared little scholarship girl. "Please, let me go," she whispers. Kenneth releases her with a shove that sends her stumbling backward. "This isn't over, Lopez, not even close." That evening, Audrey sits in her family's modest apartment and stares at the bruises forming on her wrist. Her father Carlos notices immediately when he returns from his job at the local gym. "Who grabbed you?" Carlos's voice carries the controlled rage of a man who once knocked out opponents for a living. Audrey has seen her father angry before, but never like this. "It's nothing, Papa." She lies. But Carlos El Martillo Lopez didn't become UFC champion by missing details. He takes her wrist gently in his massive hands. His fingers could easily snap bones, but his touch is tender as he examines the purple marks. "This is a grip mark from someone much larger than you," Carlos observes, his professional fighter's knowledge coming through. Someone who knows how to control people through pain. Audrey wants to lie again, but she's never been able to deceive her father. The bond between them runs too deep. "There's this boy at school," she admits reluctantly. "Kenneth Williams. His father is a judge." Carlos's expression darkens at the mention of Judge Williams. Old memories surface of a custody case years ago that the judge ruled against Carlos in a fit of class prejudice. What did this Kenneth do? Carlos asks. Settling into the chair across from his daughter, Audrey tells him about the cafeteria incident, watching her father's hands clench into fists as she speaks. When she finishes, Carlos is quiet for a long moment. You know what I taught you about bullies, mija. Audrey nods. She's heard the lesson countless times since childhood. But Papa, I can't use what you taught me, she protests. Remember what happened when I was 14. The memory hangs between them like a shadow, the incident that led to court-ordered anger management and a legal warning that still haunts their family. Carlos stands and walks to the window overlooking their neighborhood. In the distance, the lights of Westfield's wealthy district twinkle like stars. I taught you those skills for protection, not aggression, he says finally. If someone puts their hands on you again, you have my permission to defend yourself. The words carry weight, coming from a man who once dominated the octagon. Carlos Lopez has never given his daughter permission to fight before. But Papa, Audrey begins, but Carlos cuts her off with a raised hand. No buts, mija. Some people only understand one language. The harassment escalates gradually over the following weeks. Kenneth's wounded pride demands satisfaction, and he has the resources to make Audrey's life miserable in ways that leave no fingerprints. It starts with social media. Fake accounts appear overnight, spreading rumors about the violent scholarship girl whose father beat people for money. Pictures of Carlos in his UFC days are posted with captions about dangerous criminals infiltrating their elite school. The photos are carefully edited to make him look more menacing than heroic. Dennis Garcia proves to be a master of digital warfare. He hacks Audrey's phone during chemistry class and discovers videos of her training with her father in their garage gym. The clips show a different side of the quiet girl. In the videos, Audrey moves with deadly precision, landing combinations on heavy bags and grappling with training partners twice her size. Dennis carefully edits the footage to remove context. He cuts out her father's patient instruction and the controlled environment, leaving only clips of a teenage girl throwing devastating punches and executing submission holds. Look at this psycho, Dennis whispers, showing the edited videos to other students during lunch. She's been hiding this the whole time. The clips spread through social media like wildfire. Suddenly, everyone at Westfield knows that quiet Audrey Lopez has a secret violent side. Teachers start watching her differently. Classmates give her wider berths in the hallways. The transformation from invisible to notorious happens overnight. Kenneth watches with satisfaction as his plan unfolds perfectly. Russell Davis contributes his own special talents to the campaign as the police chief's son. He has access to juvenile records that most people consider confidential. He discovers the incident from Audrey's 14th year, a fight at her previous school that resulted in another student being hospitalized and Audrey being court-ordered into anger management. Russell carefully leaks this information to select parents on the school board. Soon, concerned emails are flooding Principal Anderson's inbox, demanding action against the dangerous transfer student. The physical harassment begins small. Kenneth is too smart to leave obvious evidence of his involvement. Audrey's locker gets vandalized with words like psycho and violent freak spray-painted in red letters when she reports it. Principal Anderson suggests she might have done it herself for attention. Her textbooks disappear from her desk during classes. When they're returned, they're soaked in what smells like bleach, ruining months of careful notes. The gym incidents are worse because they happen under the nose of teachers who should protect her. During wrestling unit in physical education, Kenneth volunteers to be Audrey's partner for demonstration purposes. Coach Martinez doesn't notice when Kenneth applies, holds slightly too long, or with slightly too much pressure. He doesn't see the way Kenneth's grip leaves finger-shaped bruises on Audrey's arms. "Careful there, Lopez," Kenneth whispers during one particularly painful hold. "Wouldn't want you to have an accident." The breaking point comes 3 weeks after the cafeteria incident. Audrey stays late in the library working on a history paper, losing track of time as she often does when absorbed in research. The building empties gradually around her. Even the librarian leaves at 4:30 p.m. with a distracted wave goodbye. Audrey is alone with her books and her thoughts when Dennis Garcia appears at her table. "Hey, Audrey, we need to talk." "I don't want any trouble." Audrey responds automatically, already gathering her materials. Dennis raises his hands in a peaceful gesture. "No trouble, I promise," he says with what might pass for sincerity. "Actually, I have some information you might want to hear. About who's been spreading those rumors about you." The offer stops Audrey in her tracks. She's been wondering for weeks who's been orchestrating the campaign against her family. "Someone's been doing research on your background," Dennis continues. "I know who it is, and I have proof." Against her better judgment. Audrey finds herself interested. "What kind of proof?" Dennis pulls out his phone and shows her what appears to be a screenshot of Kenneth's computer screen. It shows a folder labeled Lopez Investigation, with dozens of files inside. "He's been planning this since you rejected him." Dennis explains, "Pictures, court records, everything. But I can't show you here. Too many people around. Meet me behind the football bleachers in 10 minutes, and I'll give you copies of everything." The offer seems too good to be true. Audrey's instincts scream warnings, but her desperate need for evidence overwhelms her caution. If she can prove Kenneth's harassment campaign, she might be able to get the administration to take action. Her father could finally get justice for the way their family is being treated. "Okay," she agrees reluctantly. 10 minutes. Dennis nods and walks away. Audrey doesn't notice the slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The walk to the football stadium feels longer than usual. Audrey's footsteps echo in the empty hallways as she makes her way toward what she hopes will be vindication. The late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the campus. Most students and faculty have gone home, leaving the buildings eerily quiet. Behind the concrete bleachers, the shadows are deep and cool. It's a perfect place for a private conversation, which is exactly what makes it so dangerous. Kenneth Williams is waiting when Audrey rounds the corner. Russell Davis stands slightly behind him, while Dennis Garcia fidgets with what looks like a small camera. The setup immediately feels wrong. Audrey takes a step backward, but Kenneth's voice stops her. "Going somewhere, Lopez." His tone is different now. Gone is the fake charm he used during their previous encounters. This is Kenneth Williams without his public mask. This is the real predator.
"Dennis said he had evidence," Audrey says, her voice steadier than she feels. Kenneth laughs, a sound without warmth or humor. "Oh, he has evidence, all right,"
Kenneth replies. "Evidence of what happens to girls who think they're too good for me." Russell moves to Audrey's left while Dennis positions himself to her right. The triangle formation is deliberate, designed to cut off escape routes. "See, we've been doing some research of our own," Kenneth continues. "We know all about your little secret." The words hit Audrey like ice water. Her carefully maintained cover has been blown. But how much do they really know? "I don't know what you mean." She tries, but Kenneth's grin tells her the lie isn't working. "UFC champion daddy," Kenneth says softly. 11 years of training, black belt in jiu-jitsu. You've been pretending to be helpless while hiding the fact that you could probably kick most guys' asses. The accuracy of his information shocks Audrey. They've done their homework thoroughly. Which brings us to today's lesson. Kenneth continues, starting to circle her like a predator. You're going to learn that all the training in the world doesn't matter when you're outnumbered 3-1. Dennis raises his camera. Smile for the camera. Audrey, this is going to be your audition tape. Russell cracks his knuckles. Nothing personal. Lopez. Business is business. The attack comes suddenly. Russell lunges from the left, while Dennis drops the camera and grabs for her legs. Audrey's training kicks in automatically. She sidesteps Russell's charge and throws an elbow that catches him in the solar plexus. But Dennis's tackle takes her down to the concrete. Before she can recover, Kenneth is behind her. His arm slides around her throat in a textbook rear naked choke, while Russell pins her arms and Dennis controls her legs. Now, you're going to learn what happens to girls who don't know their place. Kenneth hisses in her ear as his forearm presses against her carotid artery. The blood flow to her brain begins to slow, and darkness creeps in from the edges of her vision. This is the moment Kenneth has been planning for weeks. The moment when Audrey Lopez discovers that all her father's training means nothing against superior numbers and proper planning. But Kenneth Williams has made one critical error in his calculations. He's underestimated exactly how much Carlos El Martillo Lopez has taught his daughter about surviving when the stakes are life and death. What Kenneth doesn't know about rear naked chokes is that Carlos Lopez spent 2 years perfecting escapes with his daughter, after she nearly died in a similar situation during a childhood kidnapping attempt. Her father's voice echoes in her head even as consciousness starts to fade. Breathe through your nose. Mija, tuck your chin down. Never panic. Audrey forces herself to relax, despite every instinct screaming to struggle. She lets her body go limp for exactly 3 seconds, causing Kenneth's grip to loosen slightly as he adjusts his position. Those 3 seconds are all she needs. Audrey tucks her chin to her chest and slides her right hand in between Kenneth's forearm and her throat, creating just enough space to breathe. Her left elbow drives backward into Kenneth's ribs with the force of 11 years of training. The impact makes him grunt, and his choke loosens another crucial inch. What the hell? Russell shouts as Audrey's hips shift, and she executes a perfect hip toss that sends Kenneth tumbling over her shoulder onto the concrete. Dennis releases her legs to scramble for his fallen camera. Audrey spins and catches him with a spinning back fist that drops him like a stone. Russell charges with his full 200 pounds of football player muscle. Audrey sidesteps and uses his momentum against him, grabbing his wrist and executing an arm drag that sends him crashing into the concrete wall. The entire sequence takes less than 10 seconds. 3 grown men lie groaning on the ground, while the quiet scholarship girl stands over them, breathing hard, but victorious. Kenneth struggles to his feet, his face purple with rage and embarrassment. You little bitch! Do you know what you've just done? Audrey's stance shifts into the fighting position her father drilled into her thousands of times, feet shoulder-width apart, hands up, weight distributed, and ready to move. I defended myself, she says quietly, just like my father taught me. The mention of Carlos Lopez makes Kenneth's eyes narrow. Your father's going to pay for this. My dad will destroy his gym, his reputation, everything. But Audrey is already backing toward the exit. She's won this battle. But she's smart enough to know the war is just beginning. Dennis's camera lies on the ground, cracked, but potentially still recording. She considers destroying it, then decides evidence might be useful later. Tell your father, Judge Williams, that Carlos Lopez's daughter sends her regards, she says, then turns and walks away. Her hands are shaking with adrenaline, but her voice remains steady. That night, Audrey sits at her kitchen table while Carlos examines the bruises on her throat. His massive hands are gentle as he checks for serious damage, but his eyes burn with cold fury. "Tell me everything," he says quietly. Audrey recounts the entire incident, watching her father's expression grow darker with each detail. When she finishes, Carlos is silent for a long moment. "This was planned," he finally says. "The camera, the location, the 3-on-1 attack. They wanted footage of you fighting back."
"Wiki?" Audrey asks, though she's starting to understand. Carlos's experience with media manipulation during his fighting career gives him insight into these tactics. "To paint you as the aggressor," he explains. "Rich kid gets attacked by violent scholarship girl. They were going to edit that footage to destroy you." The realization hits Audrey like a physical blow. If she hadn't escaped so quickly, they would have had exactly what they needed to ruin her life. Carlos pulls out his phone and dials a number from memory. "Maria, it's Carlos. I need your help." Detective Maria Santos has been Carlos's friend since their days growing up in the same neighborhood. She's now a detective with the FBI's Organized Crime Unit. "What's the situation?" Maria's voice comes through the speaker. Carlos explains the escalating harassment campaign, the planned attack, and the involvement of Judge Williams' son. "This sounds bigger than high school bullying," Maria says after hearing the details. "Judge Williams has been on our radar for years. Corruption, case fixing, connections to organized crime. If his son is running some kind of operation at that school..." Her voice trails off, but the implications are clear. "Can you look into it?" Carlos asks. "My daughter isn't safe as long as these people have power." Maria promises to investigate. In the meantime, keep documenting everything, and Carlos tell Audrey to be careful. If they're as connected as I think they are, this could get dangerous. The investigation begins immediately. Maria uses her FBI resources to dig into the Williams family finances while Audrey starts gathering intelligence at school. What she discovers shocks her. Kenneth, Russell, and Dennis aren't just bullies. They're running a sophisticated criminal operation right under the administration's nose. The Underground Fight Club operates every Friday night in the school's old gymnasium. Wealthy students bet thousands of dollars on fights between kids from poor families who are coerced into participating. Audrey follows Dennis one Friday evening and watches through a basement window as the operation unfolds. A makeshift fighting ring has been set up in the center of the gym, surrounded by bleachers filled with Westfield's elite students. In the ring, a skinny freshman named David Kim is getting beaten bloody by a much larger sophomore. The crowd cheers as money changes hands. "Next fight," Kenneth's voice booms over a microphone. "Jenny Walsh versus whoever's brave enough to face the Wildcat." Jenny Walsh is a 14-year-old girl who weighs maybe 90 pounds. She's facing a male student twice her size while rich kids scream for blood. Audrey realizes with horror that this is where she was headed. Kenneth's plan was to force her into this ring as the main event, probably against multiple opponents. The sick entertainment of watching a trained fighter get overwhelmed by numbers while they bet on her suffering. The realization makes her stomach turn. But what really shocks her is seeing Principal Anderson in the crowd. He's not just tolerating this illegal operation, he's actively participating. Police Chief Davis stands beside him, both men placing bets and laughing as children brutalize each other for their entertainment. The corruption runs deeper than anyone imagined. The entire power structure of Westfield is built on the exploitation of vulnerable students. Building alliances proves easier than expected. Too many students have suffered under Kenneth's regime, and word spreads quickly that someone finally fought back successfully.
Jenny Walsh seeks out Audrey the following Monday. Her face is still bruised from Friday night's fight, but her eyes burn with determination. "I heard what you did to Kenneth and his crew," Jenny whispers during lunch. "Can you teach me?" David Kim approaches later that same day. His ribs are still taped from his beating, but he's desperate to learn self-defense. "They'll make me fight again if I don't win soon," he explains. "I can't take many more beatings like that." More students come forward throughout the week. Lisa Rodriguez shows photos of blackmail material Kenneth's crew has on her, while Michael Torres reveals the threats against his family's business if he doesn't participate in the fights. Audrey realizes she's looking at a dozen victims of systematic abuse. These kids have been suffering in silence while the school's power structure protected their tormentors. "We need evidence," she tells the group during a secret meeting in an abandoned classroom. "Real evidence that will destroy them completely." Jenny raises her hand tentatively. "I know where they keep the betting records. Dennis made me help him update spreadsheets after my fights." The plan comes together over several days. Maria Santos provides technical support, while Carlos offers tactical advice. They'll infiltrate the next fight night with hidden cameras. Jenny and David will participate as usual, but this time they'll be wearing tiny recording devices provided by the FBI. Audrey will position herself to film the crowd, capturing footage of Principal Anderson and Police Chief Davis accepting bets and money from the illegal operation. "This is dangerous," Carlos warns his daughter. "If they catch you, these people have the power to make you disappear." Audrey thinks about Jenny's bruised face and David's broken ribs. They're already making kids disappear. "Papa." Just slowly, the quiet determination in her voice reminds Carlos of himself before big fights, when violence becomes necessary to protect the innocent. Hesitation becomes cruelty. Friday night arrives with autumn rain drumming against the school windows. Audrey slips through a side entrance that Jenny propped open earlier, her heart pounding with nervous energy. The basement gymnasium buzzes with excited voices as Westfield's wealthy elite gather for their weekly entertainment. She positions herself in the shadows near the heating ducts, camera ready. The first fight features two sophomore boys who clearly don't want to be there. Their reluctance makes the crowd jeer and demand more violence. Kenneth works the crowd like a professional promoter. "Come on, people, these losers need motivation, double the stakes." Money flies through the air as privileged teenagers bet their allowances on human suffering. Principal Anderson personally collects a percentage of each wager. Jenny's fight is brutal. Her opponent is instructed to make it last for the entertainment value, prolonging her beating while the crowd screams approval. Audrey films everything, her anger building with each impact. These people are monsters hiding behind expensive clothes and family names. When Jenny finally collapses, barely conscious, the crowd erupts in cheers. Kenneth announces the next fight with sick enthusiasm. "Special event tonight," Kenneth shouts into his microphone. "We've got ourselves a mystery fighter, someone who thinks they're tough because Daddy taught them some moves." Audrey's blood turns to ice as the crowd parts, and Russell Davis pushes a bound and gagged figure into the light. It's Isabella, her 13-year-old sister. Let's see how the Lopez family fights when it really matters. The trap is perfect. Kenneth knows Audrey is watching, knows she won't let her sister be hurt. Here's the deal. "Audrey," Senator Kenneth calls out, knowing she can hear him. "Come down here and fight like the warrior your daddy trained you to be, or little Isabella becomes tonight's main attraction." Russell produces a knife and holds it near Isabella's throat. The threat is clear and immediate. Audrey has no choice. She emerges from the shadows and walks down to the ring. The crowd's excitement reaching fever pitch as they recognize her from the viral videos. "There she is," Kenneth announces, "the violent scholarship girl who thinks she's better than us. Let's see how she handles a real challenge." 3 older students step into the ring. They're all wrestlers or football players, each outweighing Audrey by at least 50 pounds. The fight begins immediately. The first attacker rushes forward with a clumsy tackle that Audrey sidesteps easily, using his momentum to send him crashing into the ring ropes. The second tries a wrestling takedown. Audrey sprawls and catches him in a guillotine choke that puts him to sleep in seconds. The crowd goes silent. They expected to see the small girl overwhelmed, not dominating opponents twice her size. The third fighter is smarter. He keeps his distance and tries to use his reach advantage, throwing jabs and haymakers that Audrey slips with fluid head movement. When he overcommits to a right cross, she steps inside and lands a devastating uppercut to his solar plexus that drops him gasping to the canvas. 11 years of training with professional fighters has given her power that surprises everyone watching. "Enough!" Kenneth screams, his plans falling apart. "Russell, cut the girl!" But as Russell raises his knife toward Isabella, FBI agents burst through every entrance simultaneously. "FBI, everyone on the ground." The coordinated raid catches everyone by surprise. Students scream and scramble for exits that are already blocked. Principal Anderson tries to destroy betting records, while Police Chief Davis attempts to blend into the crowd. Kenneth makes a desperate play. He grabs a metal chair and swings it at Audrey's head, but she ducks under the swing and catches him with a perfect counterpunch that sends him sprawling. "This isn't over," he shouts, as FBI agents surround him. "My father will have you all arrested." But Agent Santos steps forward with a thick folder. "Your father is being arrested right now for racketeering and corruption. It's very much over." The arrests happen quickly. Kenneth, Russell, and Dennis are hauled away in handcuffs, while Principal Anderson and Police Chief Davis face federal charges. The student spectators are released to their parents with warnings. Many face expulsion when the school board is reorganized. Isabella runs to Audrey's arms. "I knew you'd save me," she whispers. And Audrey holds her sister tight. The aftermath unfolds over several weeks. Judge Williams is impeached and faces federal prison time for his role in the conspiracy. The Underground Fight Club investigation reveals connections to organized crime figures who were using the school as a recruitment ground for future enforcers. Several wealthy families see their fortunes destroyed when their participation in illegal gambling rings becomes public knowledge. Kenneth Williams receives a sentence of 5 years in juvenile detention. His wrestling scholarship to Stanford is revoked, and his family's social standing crumbles overnight. Russell Davis and Dennis Garcia face similar fates. Their father's corruption scandals destroy their families' reputations permanently. The 3 boys who once ruled Westfield High find themselves outcasts facing serious criminal charges. Audrey becomes something of a legend at the newly reorganized school. Students who were once afraid to speak out now approach her for advice and protection. She starts a self-defense club that teaches basic techniques to vulnerable students. Jenny Walsh becomes her first assistant instructor, having discovered a talent for martial arts during her recovery from the Fight Club trauma. Principal Anderson's replacement, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, implements strict anti-bullying policies that actually work. The school's culture begins to shift from one of privilege and intimidation to one of mutual respect and accountability. The wealthy families that enabled the previous corruption find their influence greatly diminished under the new administration. Carlos Lopez watches his daughter's transformation with pride. She's grown from a quiet, frightened girl into a confident young woman who uses her abilities to protect others rather than hurt them. "You've learned the most important lesson," he tells her one evening as they train together in their garage gym. "True strength comes from defending those who cannot defend themselves." 6 months later, Audrey stands before a group of new students during orientation week. She's been elected student body president by the largest margin in school history. Her speech focuses on creating a safe environment where everyone can learn without fear. The audience includes several students who survived Kenneth's reign of terror and now serve as peer counselors. "Bullying thrives in silence," Audrey tells the assembled students, "but when we stand together and speak up for each other, the bullies lose their power." The applause is thunderous. These students understand the courage it takes to stand up to systematic abuse, because they've lived through it. Detective Maria Santos attends the ceremony as a guest speaker. Her investigation into the Westfield corruption case has earned her a promotion and national recognition. "Sometimes," she tells the audience, "justice requires ordinary people to do extraordinary things." Audrey Lopez proved that one person's courage can change an entire system. The local news covers the story extensively. Carlos Lopez is interviewed about his daughter's heroism and his role in training her. "I taught her to fight," he says simply, "but she taught herself when to fight. That's what makes her special." The interview helps rehabilitate the family's reputation. Carlos's gym becomes more popular than ever as parents seek real self-defense training for their children. Resolution. Kenneth serves his full sentence and emerges into a world where his family name means nothing. The Williams fortune is destroyed by legal fees and civil lawsuits from victims. Escalation. Audrey receives a full scholarship to study criminal justice at UCLA. She plans to become a prosecutor specializing in cases involving abuse of power. Visual clue. During her graduation speech, Audrey notices a familiar figure in the audience. Kenneth Williams has been released early for good behavior, but his once imposing presence seems diminished and defeated. Emotional shift instead of fear or anger. Audrey feels only pity for her former tormentor. His need for power over others has left him empty and alone, while she has found purpose in protecting others. Ambiguous ending. A new student approaches Audrey after graduation, showing bruises that look suspiciously like finger marks. The cycle of abuse continues in new forms, requiring eternal vigilance. Line to remember. The quiet ones aren't necessarily weak, Audrey says, looking directly at Kenneth as she delivers her final words. Sometimes we're just choosing our battles carefully. And when we finally fight, the bullies discover they picked the wrong target. The story ends with Audrey walking toward her future, surrounded by friends who once lived in fear but now stand tall behind them. The rebuilt Westfield High represents the possibility of real change when good people refuse to stay silent. Sometimes the smallest person in the room carries the biggest stick. Sometimes the quiet girl in the corner is the most dangerous person in the building. And sometimes, justice wears a scholarship student's uniform and speaks with a whisper that becomes a roar. The story ends with Audrey walking toward her future, surrounded by friends who once lived in fear but now stand tall behind them. The rebuilt Westfield High represents the possibility of real change when good people refuse to stay silent. Sometimes, the smallest person in the room carries the biggest stick. Sometimes the quiet girl in the corner is the most dangerous person in the building. And sometimes, justice wears a scholarship student's uniform and speaks with a whisper that becomes a roar. Kenneth Williams watches from the parking lot as Audrey Lopez receives her diploma. He sees the confidence in her posture, the respect in everyone's eyes, the future stretching bright before her. His own future remains uncertain, his family name destroyed, his reputation ruined, his dreams shattered by his own cruelty. The girl he tried to choke behind those bleachers has become everything he never could. A true leader who earns respect instead of demanding it through fear and intimidation.